So another day, another test stream, live, using my Houses and Humans t-shirt, since we're playing multi-user dungeons. So today, let's start off with the usual, everybody is unique. Telepathy is not real yet, although social media is getting close to being able to read your mind. And today there is no wrong answers. See, unless you're trying to use one of the current AI tools, and when most answers are wrong. So I've been looking at resurrecting and modifying stuff that's been around for a long time. That I've been running a multi-user dungeon since the early 90s, and I had previously been where am I? Where's my mouse gone? There. Wrong screen. Okay, that's why it doesn't work. I'm looking up in the other monitor, and it's KVM to the wrong one. So let's just drag new page, drag it up there. That way it makes it work easier for me. So we're having. I was looking at this TinyMud, which I've been running for a long time on and off. And I see if I can talk and type at the time. Probably not. Wow, it's actually quite hard to talk and type at the same time. So we've been looking at. I've been looking at these different TinyMuds. So what I'll do is I'll just drag this down to here. There we go. And as always, it's been one of those things where I don't always keep up with social media, or this. Everybody has their own timeline, and therefore things that are fairly popular in other areas I might not have caught on with. So I've been running this TinyMud or TinyMud derivative for a long time. And then I was going around looking for certain things today and found, yes, there are still people running TinyMuds around online. And yeah, it's they have their own history of and that sort of thing. And so what I've done here is this is one of the pages I found, and it's about a TinyMud, and the mud on one of the muds on here is still live. I mean, they still run it. So at the bottom there, you can't see that. Okay, let me just see if I can. I could drag it over here. Move this page over here. So this muds.tocobrator.com 4201 it's still working. I mean it's still up and running. So that's an interesting thing I learnt. Hadn't realised that these things were still around. So yeah, it's interesting. Different history, different mods. The TinyMud source I got off GitHub recently is like 1.5 point something, and the ones they're talking about on here are still 1.5 dot something. So it's interesting to me. I'm looking at my comparing my source, which was more like a 1.4 something, which was, again, I got in about 1990 probably, and it's been running that database I started there at Imperial College. That version of the TinyMud has been running. That database has been running basically for 30 plus years. There was a few periods when I didn't have a server that was online long enough to really run it, or didn't have enough bandwidth. And I think the advantage of a TinyMud and these text-based games is they don't use a lot of bandwidth. There's not transferring graphics, they're not transferring audio. So actually they are a low resource thing. So in the original days of this project, when I was running a TinyMud on, say, a PC, to compile the source back then would take over an hour. Today it takes 15 seconds. So the sort of work I was doing back then was much more tricky to debug. So you had to be much more careful with what you're doing, and I'm actually fairly impressed now that I was able to get all that stuff done in an environment which had so much less resources. Even the PC had a hard time loading in the full database I was using at the time, and so I had to make it so that basically what's called virtualization. That means that the rooms and other objects that were not currently being accessed were basically left or were written to disk, and only the objects that were being currently active, such as the rooms the active players were in, were loaded into memory. Made sure that the data structures were as small as possible, and all these things back then made sense. The computer itself probably only ran 66 megahertz, which was a PC. That was how slow things were. Obviously the current machine it's running on is a multi-core one running at 3 gigahertz. So you can work out how many times better that machine is compared with what we used to be running on. And so yes, I have found some historical pages. Let's switch to another one that I was looking at. It's around here somewhere. So here's another one. So this is basically a history of MUDs, again TinyMud, and the way the terminology has changed over time. This one mentions UberMud, Marcus Ranum, who I worked with at Trusted Information Systems, so I know Marcus really well. Marcus Ranum was one of my wedding guests back in the 96. So I knew several. So his MUD was interesting. That is, allowed you to move between instances of the game. So you the player object was carried around attributes which were mobile across games. There were other versions where the equivalent to lock functions was done using languages like Forth, programming language. It was very simple to do, etc. Let's go look at a different one. I don't have Scap, hang on. Okay, so I don't have let me just work this one out. I need to log into YouTube again so I can get my client. Yeah, sure. Don't want any of that, that's not what I'm looking for. The thing about being live is that I'm a sort of impatient person, and being live means that I'm not going to have to go take recorded video and edit it. I get bored. That's boring stuff to do. So being live means it's Yeah, it's just whatever comes out comes out. I don't have to. I think a lot about stuff such when I'm driving, and then as soon as you get in on front of the camera, your thoughts dry up. It's so annoying. So let me work out what I was about to do here. I want to go look at my live feed. So I need to switch to here, switch to there. Where do I find my current live feed? I have to go to this content, live. It doesn't show it either. Oh, live now. Okay, this is the one I want to watch then. Okay, chat is up on my other screen. So 1, 2. I get about 20 seconds delay to the copy I'm looking at on the screen. Okay, so oops, sorry, banging the microphone. Chat rate 1, analytics, okay, I'm getting there. Settings, let's try to double check these. Yeah, it's windy outside. Excellent stream health, okay, that's good enough for me at the moment. So we'll go back to what I was doing on the mod history. Put a space in here, I think it'll make a difference. So this was a page I noticed, which was, just bring it down a moment. Eek. There we go. So this is a page from apparently in about 1994. And just off the side of the screen here is one of the early instances of this MUD I'm running. This is my Imperial College address, and that's where I was running it. So that database is still up and running in the current version of the MUD. Not the tiny MUD. Let's go and look up the... sorry, just drop around here. Ding. So this is the... So one of the advantages I did was add a guest accounts, so you don't even have to log in. You can just jump straight into the game, or I could do if it was running. Okay, so I broke it somewhere. That's true about being a software developer. That current copy is not running. So what I'm doing with that copy that's not running currently is I've been trying to have it so that to make this friendly for people to build, although you can do all the building within the game itself, that there is no current mechanism for a regular user to save the game they've been building. Currently the database is saved every 30 minutes. Yeah, it's 30 minutes. And then if the game is shut down or crashes, it's currently saved, and then when the game is restarted, it's loaded and it continues from where it left off. But if you're just a user who wants to play around with the building stuff, you really want to be able to do that without and see what you've done in a way that's more convenient and local, for instance. So maybe you want to do offline building. And so what I'm trying to do currently is that the back-end engine supports loading multiple databases, and each database is separate logically. What I'm going to do here is make it so that I add a load command, and then you send the database content over the same connection you would normally you're playing the game, and then that would start up a database instance, which then would switch you to that instance. So you can then have your copy of the database running, and then there'll be a save command, which will then basically spit the file back at the user. And using the web client will allow you to then save that to your local machine. So that's the plan. So basically enhance the web front end so you can basically upload your database, edit it online, share it online, and then save any changes you've made. So that's one of the things I'm looking at the moment, to make it so that it's more of a more convenient for people to learn how to program and build their own text-based games. There are other gaming systems. Obviously, since this has been running for 32 years, you've got obviously recently things like Minecraft, and obviously Minecraft with multiple player online, Roblox, even the what's it called? Well, probably nowadays if you run out, you can do VR chat, construction. There's a lot more other systems you can do, but the beauty of these text-based systems is that it's low overhead, very easy for you to build imaginative environment, just like reading a book. But you don't have to write it all in one before you publish it. You can publish it as you go along, and you can take feedback and interact with with your readers effectively. So anyway, that's what I've been doing recently. I've been looking at different things online. I was originally looking for other databases that I could use to show and how things work. And I've been looking at the code of a current sort of TinyMud to see how their code currently differs from what I've done. They have some features, but mostly what they've done, the version I've been working on, can do just as easily in a much more flexible way. So, for instance, in the adventure and dungeon games, obviously which are written in effectively the Zork implementation language or equivalent, they have concept of health, and you have to fight some of the characters in the game, and so that is actually available in the online system here, and it's implemented as some extra capabilities of the lock function. So, for instance, the game engine now supports the concept of health, and therefore it has a lock function which can do damage, which also can obviously heal. So basically, when you add negative or positive numbers, you either heal or you damage. There's also a simple level-based system. So what that means is that if you go below a certain level, you lose rank. Now again, that's all that's partly hard-coded, and also just partly built into It's programmable in the database, so the user can make their own versions of it, but it's also partially hard-coded. So usually what happens is you have an idea, if you're an engineer, and you work out how you think you can do it. You implement it, try it out, get some feedback, and then look at whether you can re-implement it in more efficient ways or slightly different ways. Sometimes you get to the point where, because it's been out there long enough, that backward compatibility is an issue, or you just have to start again from scratch and throw the old stuff away and say sorry. So the idea with something like this, the game database, if you dig a room and you link and build an environment and link them together and make a story, then that will be preserved as much as it can be. Okay, time to just stop the stream and work out what I'm going to do for the next, fix that bug.